The following program contains the opinions of the host, guests, and call-in participants. These do not necessarily represent the views of this show's distributors or sponsors. This program may contain obscene, profane, or otherwise objectionable language. Viewer discretion is advised. Hey, howdy ho, everybody. Coming to you cordless from glamorous Minneapolis. It's Monday night, January 5th, 2026. I'm Jim Peters. Welcome to another edition of Jim Peters at Night. This is episode number 306. If you're keeping score at home, and you should, because someday, I keep telling you, there's going to be a test. Man, am I glad to see you folks. I tell you, so it's been 17 days since we've done the show. Holiday, took the time off. I don't like not working. My brain just turns to mush. So, yesterday I got back at it. It was Sunday, but we kind of work a little bit ahead here, and I unbelievable. I just like getting back into the groove. Is like it's not painful, but it's like it's almost like I've never done this before. Now, Dennis Kneale is our guest today. He's a former anchor from CNBC and Fox Business. He's written a couple of books. He has an upcoming book coming out called The Oregoners, and like we do most episodes, so this show is live. We tape the interviews in the afternoon, and as I've said before, we do that mostly for technical reasons because I do not want to bore you if someone comes on here live and we don't have no sound or there's no picture, and it happens all the time, and more it's happening. This wasn't happening when we started. I mean, we certainly have the ability to do the interviews live, but more and more as time gone on, people are having more and more technical problems. So now we tape all of them. So it's like it's almost like I never did it before. Jesus. I mean, it's like I don't like it. And I'm 70. I just turned 70. It's like a friend of mine has this theory, and he's right, that people who retire die in 2 years, and they seem to. That seems to be true. It's actually true in my family. I know that I had several quite successful people who decided to retire, and within 2 years they were dead. And not that I care about dying per se, but man, I just don't like I don't like not doing anything. I'm not good at it anymore. I used to be life of the party, cruises, vacations, all sorts of stuff. Now, I don't know. Somebody should give me some warning that this is going to happen. I mean, I've almost become a recluse. Not quite, but still. So, yeah, Dennis Kneale is our guest tonight. Fabulous conversationalist. We talked about a whole bunch of stuff. His upcoming book is about Portland, Oregon, or Oregon, the state of Oregon in general, and Portland specifically, how it's gone completely to hell in like the last 20 years. And what causes that. So we'll talk a little bit about that. And then we got a Jim Cast coming up later on. We'll talk about the Maduro stuff. I mean, two things happened this afternoon, or actually technically this morning. I think it was around maybe noon Eastern time. Both Maduro was arraigned in federal court in New York City, and also Tim Walz, the governor of our fabulous state of Minnesota here, announced he's not running for re-election because he said he would be a distraction. And you know what? He would. And you know why he's not running? Because the apparatchiks who run the Democratic Party told him not to. That's why. I don't know who those people are. It's like they're like the Illuminati. They're somewhere, but yeah, they exist. And yeah, they told Tim, sorry, Tim, tough luck. So, and meanwhile, Somali fraud in Minnesota goes on. There you go. That's what you got. Now, I got a big announcement to make about this month, January. Normally, if you go to our website, if you go to our Rumble YouTube page, all that sort of stuff, it says we do the show 4 nights a week, and normally we do. This month, though, we're only going to do it 2 nights a week. We're only going to do Mondays and Thursday nights. And next week, we're only doing Mondays, and the week after that, it's going to be Monday and Wednesday. And there's a reason for this. I can't tell you. It actually involves the show. we're making some plans here and stuff. I'm hoping maybe next month or March I might have something to announce to you. I'm hoping. But yeah, so that's the reason for that. So we're doing a show tonight, and we're going to do a show on Thursday night. Thursday night, I guess, is going to be former Marine Corps Colonel William Dunn, and he's gonna talk about what happened with this whole. I talk about the Gymcast today about how incredible it was that the U.S. military actually got Moderna literally out of bed, and from Venezuela, his bed in Venezuela, to a jail cell in New York City in 7 hours. And you could barely make that commercial flight in 7 hours with all the waiting around the airport and stuff. No, I mentioned that. So you hear, yeah. So yeah, we'll talk about that. But yeah, he's going to be talking about that, and he's also written a book called Gunfighters Rule. And I think I'm not quite certain. I've read the description of the book. I think it's fiction, but I'm not really quite sure. I don't know. We'll find out. Anyway, he's a fascinating guy. We'll have him on Thursday. We have a guest lined up for Monday, pretty much locked in. Not quite yet. I don't like to announce guests until they're absolutely confirmed. So yeah, so next week we have a show on Monday, and that's it. That's the only show we're doing next week. And then the following, we're coming back the following Monday. I think that's the 18th, if I'm right. So at any rate, yeah, we taped this interview with Dennis Kneale this afternoon, and in 12 seconds you get to hear it. Joining us from his home in Brooklyn, New York, the inestimable, did I get that right? Dennis Kneale. Dennis, I'm going to read some of your credits off here. Hold on just a second.
All righty. That'll take up most of the time we have, I'm sure. Go ahead.
I didn't frame this before. I forgot to do this before you started here. You're a former anchor at CNBC and Fox Business. You're a former editor at Forbes and the Wall Street Journal. You've got a book coming out called, or is it, you pronounce it Oregoners?
Oregoners, yeah.
Oregoners, yeah. And your previous book was the leadership genius of Elon Musk. I'm going to put that on the screen right here. That's your foreword. Beautiful. Say again? What?
Isn't that beautiful? It's a beautiful shot.
Yes, yeah.
Great job.
Kind of nice and minimalistic too. Not too much information on the cover. I actually like that. You know, and you're a spokesperson for Save Our Cities, and that's
I'm
actually
not a spokesperson at all. I'm just using their research. You know, I haven't met them or anything. That was just an error that I got in there somehow that I have failed to correct. My apologies.
Yeah. So before
be their spokesman, though, I'm available.
Say again, what?
I'd be happy to be their spokesman. I'm available.
Yeah.
The things going on in Oregon are a canary in the coal mine for blue cities everywhere, and especially a harbinger of my beloved New York. Now that we've elected our own socialist, oh my gosh, it doesn't bode well.
What do you think? Okay, so here's my take on this from 2,000 miles away. At first, I thought this guy's going to be hampered by the bureaucracy and his lack of experience of actually executing anything. But now I'm starting to think he might actually be dangerous.
I mean, it seems like there is a certain intentional, hey, you can go jump. I'm in charge now. They're really, for him on the first day, Mamdani, to get rid of a couple of orders that were kind of pro-Israel or against anti-Semitism, and for this Muslim who has a record of anti-Semitic comments, for him to come out on the first day and do that is so assiduously aggressive and in your face. It really says, screw you.
Yeah.
There's 2 million Jewish people in New York, okay? And I think he sent them quite a message, and I think he did it on purpose. And also the decisions he's making, my gosh, have you seen this? He appointed this convicted robber of taxi drivers to be on some justice advisement committee. He's got this white woman who says that property ownership is white supremacy, and basically she wants to collectivize. He said in his speech that he wants to get rid of the frigidity of rugged individualism. And I thought, are you sure the speechwriter didn't mean rigidity versus frigidity, which means you don't want to have sex, in favor of the warmth of collectivism. What the hell is that? I mean, it's just bodes so badly, so poorly. And you look at Portland, where downtown, the property values have fallen on average 57% in the past few years. Big Pink, the most famous downtown office tower, 42 stories, sold for, I think it was like 380 million or so in 2015, just sold for $45 million to a Vegas car dealer.
Well, Dennis, I have to ask you, why did you decide to write a book strictly about Oregon in general, or Portland in particular? Are you from there? Or?
I was no, I'm a New Yorker, and now that I've spent a couple of weeks in Oregon and Portland so far, I've decided I'm an expert. When I was doing the Elon book, The Leadership Genius of Elon Musk, and I have 11 lessons of Elon, and I became fascinated with his decrying this woke mind virus and just how it's spreading. And then Trump in September decides, I want to send in 200 National Guard troops to the ICE building there in Portland to defend it. It's been under siege over 100 nights in a row from a couple dozen Antifa-style Black Bloc protesters. And so, my gosh, it unleashes this torrent of local outrage. How dare you do this? Come in and try to help us with this. And I mean, the governor, the mayor, the city council, the entire congressional delegation, both U.S. senators, just so upset about this. And I just thought they are blinded and brainwashed. The woke mind virus has taken hold there. And so decided to go start looking into that. And my gosh, then all of this stuff kept happening there. Then the petition signatures, you know, they have this new $4 billion tax increase for the Department of Transportation, which of course is unionized. And then the governor, this Tina Kotek, intentionally waits 53 days before signing the bill, because that way it's only a 90-day window from when it passes the legislature, the bill, to raise signatures, tens of thousands to raise signatures, get it on the ballot to try to challenge this new law. Well, she waits 53 days of the 90 days, right? Well, what she didn't know is, because I talked to Bruce Starr, the minority leader, Republican leader in the Senate, and who led this effort, she gave him time to get organized. And people were really pissed. And so they got 250,000 signatures. They needed only about 78,000. They got 250,000 signatures of registered voters saying, hey, we want to put this on the ballot. And now it's going to be on the ballot in November 2026, just as Tina Kotek, the governor, who's widely expected to win re-election, because the Democrats have, Oregon has an elected Republican governor. It's the longest streak in America since 1982. It's over 40 years, okay? So she's widely thought that she's going to win, but now she's going to be on the ballot with this tax increase that's up for, and if you're not that much of a voter in the past, and yet you go there to vote on this increase that doubles the title registration fee, it raises the gas tax 18% or something. Well, now you're not going to vote for Tina when you're there to vote against the gas tax. That is her legislation. You're going to vote against her as well. So she could be in trouble, is what I'm hearing there.
So what you just said brings up so many questions. First of all, the mind virus you're talking about. So yeah. I have started to conclude, and I'm not really making an analogy here, that basically roughly a quarter of the American public has somehow gone crazy. I don't quite understand what's going on here. It's like logic has been completely thrown out the window. Is this a generational thing? I mean, you get down talking about Mamdani in New York. He was elected by people largely under the age of 35. And also, go ahead. Please, go ahead.
I think you're right. It is in part a generational thing. I think academia, college and K through 12 have been brainwashing kids and kind of teaching them liberal dogma for so many years now that it's now come home to roost. Christine Drazan is the Republican governor candidate. She lost to Tina Kotek in 2022. She's running again in 2026. I talked to her. She talked to a teacher the other day who said, I haven't taught math in my class in months. It's all social service. It's all about,
Right.
the liberal dogma. There's a law that says, oh, if one kid disrupts the class, you empty the classroom and then you deal with this one child. Well, she hasn't been able to teach math in months because of this one kid and because of this state law. The state keeps imposing all these ridiculous woke requirements instead of letting school districts decide for themselves what's best for their kids.
Do you know in that instance, does that kid know that what he's doing? Do you know at all?
I don't know, but I wouldn't be surprised at all, because kids today are so much more filled with guile, right?
Yeah.
And purity, and they've
That's
seen
why I
things
asked.
in the world. Yeah.
I just saw a thing about the fact that I can't remember what state it was in. Matter of fact, it might have been here in Minnesota, about the fact that like 60% of all the kids in 12th grade can't even do math on an 8th grade level or something like that.
It's it's one thing to have high taxes, and Oregon, Portland has the second highest taxes in the nation after only New York City. But it's another thing to get nothing for the money you're spending. They're 20th ranked in spending per student for education. It's up something like 60% in 5 years, okay? And yet they are at the bottom. We're Mississippi, as one political operative there told me. They're at the bottom of performance in 4th grade and 8th grade reading and math. And so they keep spending all this money, but it's going into administrators and staff. It's going into more union jobs. Unions in Oregon have a startlingly tight grip on all of government, on who runs for office, on who wins. They spend more than any other entity, apparently, in political contributions to elect the people who keep giving them more money. They have a public employee pension crisis going on in that state, and it's getting neglected because unions run everything.
And so at what point, including California in this too, we're going to see states filing bankruptcy? I mean, it's bound to happen, isn't it?
The thing is, they have a constitutional prohibition from taking on debt, from running a deficit, right?
But they are running the deficit, aren't they?
Well, they're having to fix a deficit. They're raising taxes to cover all these deficit gaps, right? They recently had a new revenue projection come out. And you know what? Oregon succeeds in spite of itself, okay? For 60 years, it's been this hot babe, the hot blonde at the party that everyone wanted to kind of live with and kind of go out with. And it still benefits from some of that inertia and some of that continuing motion. So they were expecting a big deficit, and instead it went down by 60 million, the projection. They brought in 300 million beyond projections that they're now forecasting because of business activity. So they got lucky there. But overall, their social services obligations, their entitlements are massive. They spend something like 20 or 30% more per capita on SNAP than the rest of the country. 1 in 6 people is on SNAP in Oregon versus 1 in 8 nationwide. Portland spends over 700 million on the homeless. I mean, it's just and they hand it all to NGOs that then take a certain chunk of it and donate it right back into the campaigns of the people who gave them the money.
Right, and of course the thing is, the same thing's happening in Los Angeles, where they spent $1 billion on the homeless, and homelessness went up 12% last year.
Anytime money floods into any given market, the market booms and expands. So, and the NGOs, there's some of them getting $100 million a year in grants. Okay, well, if they cure homelessness and get the 14,000 people in the Portland County, Multnomah County, get them off the street, they put themselves out of a job. And so instead, they make it as comfortable as possible for them. They give them clean foil for their drug usage. They give them clean needles. They make sure that they have enough food, so much food that the rats end up eating it because they give them more food than they can even eat. And the thing is, they're making it as comfortable as possible. When I had one guy who lived on the streets for 4 years in the early 2000s and now runs his own limo company. And he said, the thing is, if you want to end homelessness, make it as miserable as possible.
Yeah, well, or do something, but they're obviously not trying to end it, because this is one of the problems, secret problems of democracy, is that you can't solve a problem because if you solve a problem, there's an enormous amount of people who end up out of work. You know, so exactly. No one can solve a problem.
The homeless industrial complex. and it's big. And I think we're going to find that the graft and outright corruption and theft that went on in Minneapolis regarding daycare centers and Somali immigrants, I think we're going to find similar things are going on in the homeless industrial complex in blue cities. I wouldn't be surprised if there's also scams going on in Republican cities. I believe both parties feed at the same trough.
Yeah, I do too. But I have to say that right now, I don't know if I'd say this 30 years ago, but right now it seems like the Republicans might be doing it less. I don't know.
I hope they are, man. But it just means because they're just asleep at the switch and they're just not as smart as the Democrats. I mean, right. So often, you know, in fact, I think that canary in the coal mine. I think that Oregon is a microcosm for this too. In Oregon, the Republican Party, having not elected a governor since 1982, having not elected a statewide official since Secretary of State in 2016, I think it is. They're so used to losing. They're so used to being number two. They've lost testosterone.
Yeah.
They're like the Washington Generals who were paid good money to lose every game they played to the Harlem Globetrotters, okay? Right. And they keep showing up, and they manage to go ahead and benefit in some way, and they keep getting reelected in their gerrymandered, Republican minority district. Understand that this is looked at as a really red state, but really it's purple. It has 36 counties. Trump won 27 counties, and there's just 6 counties up there in the far northwest in that liberal enclave that end up controlling the state. In the same way New York City controls this entire state when Trump won so many red counties to the north with fewer people in them, right? But it's just the urban tail wagging the statewide dog, you know?
I want to get back to what you were talking about anti-Semitism in New York City. Did you, you and I are the same generation. Did you ever think that anti-Semitism would raise its ugly head ever again? I just find this just fascinating. And I was reading this weekend that somebody was saying that the reason is because the young people, they're basically kind of they're divorced from the Holocaust in terms of both time and also mental focus or whatever.
And education, and even being educated about it. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Well, look, I wasn't surprised because the Jews are always taken in the neck, man. I mean, it's been thousands of years.
Yeah, right.
And just always, you got to pick out somebody. And so there is this installed base. There's this, the compounding, just like money compounds and grows. Well, so does something like that. And then with the rise of the internet and social media and keyboard courage and all these little ridiculous jerks in their boxer shorts in their mother's basements, sitting there saying all these nasty things, and getting attention and clicks. I mean, God, but I think instead for me, Jim, the surprise is that it's so institutionalized and accepted on college campuses and Congress, where anti-Semitic things said, and they're going to censure the member, and so they say, and Islamophobia is bad too. I mean, this constant, by the way, Islamophobia is a lie and a myth. I did a column on this. I forget where I placed it, because it turns out the figures show, and the Biden administration declared a whole new initiative on Islamophobia because it's such a problem. But when you look for per 100,000 Muslims and assaults per 100,000 Jews, assaults on Jews are 3 times as high as assaults on Muslims.
I know you're right. I know
ridiculous and made up in the same way as the myth of trans genocide.
Oh God! Don't even get me started on that.
Trans people are murdered in a year. It's like 49.
Yeah, right.
Well, first of all, prostitutes.
There's hardly any of them to begin with.
Right.
Now I have to clarify here, because I've been very clear on the show about the fact that I know that transgenderism is a real thing, but there's 2 problems. First of all, it's an incredibly small number of people that, for lack of a better term, suffer from this. And then secondly, the majority of people who think they're transgender are just crazy. That's the problem. So you basically need to be a psychiatrist to even figure out who's transgender and who isn't.
Right. Well, as a matter of fact, I think I wrote about this. or I did a podcast, my podcast, What's Bugging Me, on this. All right, there's a disorder. It's known as some kind of body dysmorphia where people feel like they should not have been born with the limbs they have. Okay.
Yeah.
They want to amputate an arm or a leg, or, so there's this one kid, he's 18 or something, working in a lumber mill where there's saws and stuff. And he feels like he should not have the first 2 fingers of his hand. And he's obsessed with it. And it rules his life because he feels, he's like, well, a doctor agrees to amputate the fingers. Oh, it's these 2, the ring finger and the pinky.
Is this a real story?
Amputates the finger. It's a true story, and they wrote a medical study on it, on how, well, he feels better now, so gee, who knows? But I want to know, so where are you going to stop, number 1? And number 2, so if that's a syndrome that is a mental disorder, then what do you think of a guy who wants to cut off his own penis?
Yeah, right. I know.
And why aren't you calling that a mental disorder?
Really?
And it turns out, I believe I've read over 90% of trans women, air quotes on purpose, still have the equipment of a male, and they're going to keep it.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Why would they have to go ahead and go that extreme if it turns out society is willing to say trans women are women?
Caitlyn Jenner's been very upfront about this. In fact, she still has his equipment.
I didn't know whether.
And also, he uses it. He has sex with women with his equipment, and yet he's a transgender woman. Now, I'm actually okay with this because he's not screwing with anybody. Well, not literally, I guess. I mean, he's not. He's not messing with anybody else's life. So I'm all right with anything he wants to do as long as it's consensual. Is fine with me. But no, it's like, yeah, he's still using his equipment.
Man, I did not know that. Someone I know was at a wedding that this person attended, and was there with a girlfriend, because I guess now it identified both as a woman and a lesbian. That's the thing. I think I'll bet you it would turn out that most or many men who decide they are women end up dating women.
Yeah.
That way they get 2 special classes that are women and they're lesbian.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
I know. It's, but you're right as far as the however, I don't know how you put it. I can't remember. But the fact is, there's an extremely, extremely small part of the population that's dominated the conversation.
Yes.
And go ahead.
And I have gay friends who, I have a friend who died in the 90s, AIDS, who would just be scandalized by this. In fact, I had Brandon Straka. It's spelled Straka, S-T-R-A-K-A. This great activist. He does this walk away movement because he was once a liberal and he realized all the lies about Trump. And so he now leads that movement. He came out to talk about a division between the trans portion, which has gone way too far, and normal gay people who just want to be left alone, man.
Right.
They want to be able to date their own fellow same sex.
I know a lot of gay people, and you're absolutely right. It's a very quiet thing, but they don't, the LGBT, they don't want to have anything to do with a T. They want
to divide that flag because they've gone too far. And then you have to ask why. How did that happen? Well, there are liberal interests, I think, that were pushing that agenda because, my gosh, once the gays got, the right to marry, they don't have any beef anymore. We've got to find the next group that's so upset and oppressed because we can use them to push for, lax changes or whatever, promiscuity or whatever across the spectrum by pushing for the most extreme group. But what happens after them? After they fall, they're no longer in vogue. What's it going to be next? It's going to be child molesters because
and it already is.
We call them minority attracted person.
That's right.
And you know what? These word euphemism things are important. They are early clues to where society is headed. Right, and once they can force you to change the basic rules of freaking grammar that have been around for hundreds of years, my gosh, now they can make you do anything. It just drives me crazy. And on LinkedIn, they say, oh, Dennis Kneel celebrated their birthday. Do not call me a there. Oh, that is a subject-verb disagreement, okay? I celebrated his birthday, and you're supposed to put up he, him. And everyone in Portland has business cards, Dennis Neal, he, him, as
Yeah.
if it might be in doubt. Why do you even have to bother mentioning it? And or let the person where it's not apparent go ahead and then mention it. But the thought that the rest of us have to also mention it so that you don't feel like you've been singled out, so that you don't feel bad. Oh my gosh, get a pillow and a blanket and go take a nap under a table.
Well, the whole thing's being basically now jiggered to keep people from feeling bad, isn't it? Isn't that kind of the problem?
Yes, because feelings are so important. Here's where we got into a terrible, terrible thing. Okay, it's when we decided that certain content can be harmful.
Yes,
okay?
right.
A post on X cannot leap out and smack you in the face, and
Correct.
you don't even have to read it. So stop your whining about it and claim to be injured about it. And yet they've arrested in the UK hundreds of them for things they posted online.
Yes.
And they threatened to arrest Americans. And I want to say to Keir Starmer, come on, come try it. Can
you imagine that? They've actually talked about extraditing people from the United States.
Yes.
I find this is mind-boggling. It's just
they seem to forget that I believe we have more than, I think it's 300 or 400 million guns in this country. Okay, I mean, my God.
I'm Dennis. I'm curious on your thoughts on this. A lot of people think maybe Britain is too far gone, that they're beyond saving.
Because their population lacks the majority of the people who grew up there and lived there, and it's all of these foreigners and invaders basically. And I always want to take the upside of a trade. I always want to look for the optimistic case, and I pray that turns out to be untrue. I pray that people rise up and push back. I mean, one wonders how much more. I mean, you've heard about the rape scandal there.
Of course.
Pakistani Muslim men, literally over 10 years raping, like I think it's 200,000 girls.
Yeah.
And oh my God.
Nobody does anything.
How do you recover from that?
And yet you can get arrested for posting something somebody doesn't like online. It's mind-boggling. I mean, it's just I never thought the world would come to this. And I get to the point back to what I was talking about. Are people literally just going crazy?
And they're also brainwashed by the media, which are not covering the stories. They leave things out. That's why the media hate the X platform. This is why, because of that woke mind virus concern that Elon had, why he was willing to raise $44 billion. I think 25 billion of it, his personal money. It's more money, I think, than any private equity guy has ever put personally into any investment ever. Yeah. Okay, of course, the guy's worth $700 million today, so who cares? It's nothing. But he still did put up that money. He raised the rest of it from investors that he's worked with a long time to buy this platform because he felt like, my gosh, this is a chance to save freedom of speech. He did it really for that. He never did it to make money. And everyone said, you've destroyed Twitter. You've killed it. Oh my gosh, it's a bunch of racists on there now. And today it is the most influential, most watched, most downloaded, most powerful media platform in the world because it lets people say what they want to say. And it lets truth get out there. The other truth that the media are doing all they can to bury. The media, I've said this a couple hundred times before, Jim, but the media, basically, I did more stories they on the Twitter files, which exposed the government cracking down dozens of agencies wanting to silence the accounts of thousands of conservatives that millions of Americans had the right to hear. Okay. I mean, I wrote more stories about that scandal and did more podcasts than the entire staffs of the New York Times and Washington Post combined. Usually the press is so upset with First Amendment violations. This was the most rampant government violation of our First Amendment rights in history, and the media buried it and looked the other way. I mean, it's an embarrassment, and they should be embarrassed.
Dennis, you coming back? I don't know if you can still hear me. Hello? We lost you there for a second.
Sorry about that.
You know, the worst thing about the example you just talked about is is X banning or shutting down the account of the New York Post because of the Hunter Biden thing. They actually shut the account.
Twitter. Yes.
Yeah, Twitter.
The old Twitter did, and said, well, you can only post it if you follow these rules or something. And the Post said, screw you. We're not following no stinking rules. And so it was off that platform for 2 weeks. Yes. And it's because the FBI for months have been lobbying the people at Twitter. Now, be careful, because there's some disinformation campaign that's going to be coming. As we get close to the election, they were softening them up because they knew they already had, the FBI did, the Hunter Biden laptop. They knew what was on it. They knew it was legitimate, but they're making Twitter and the other social media platforms, Facebook, etc., worry that there's disinformation coming. And the big mistake they made, and first of all, shame on the tech guys for not pushing back and saying, we're going to stand up for the freedom of speech. No one did. None of them.
I know.
Shame on all of them. At the same time, though, when government comes and suggests to you that there's a problem with content and you're a business, you're not going to ignore that. It's not a suggestion ever. And then the Supreme Court dodged the issue and refused to rule when it should have. But terrible things happened, and Elon changed it all by buying it and freeing the platform.
Yeah, but I really hate to dwell on this, but yeah, every other thing being equal, which it probably wasn't, it's all the surveys have said that 16% of the people who were on Twitter or the public would have voted against Biden if they'd known about that, and that would have thrown the election. That would have been the difference, you know.
Yes. And so that counts as election interference.
Yeah.
So, and until we have, I think, of course, we can't get Congress to pass anything. The Republicans in Washington hate Trump as much as Democrats do almost. They fear him, and they can't wait for him to be gone.
Well, you're talking about people who don't have cojones. The Republicans basically have no cojones except for Trump. He has balls.
Yeah. They're like the Washington Generals as well.
That's right. They are.
Parts right now. I wish I had some water, but I've run out.
Oh my God.
How are they going with that?
You want to get some? I could tap dance for a second or something. I'm good at
that. Can I get a glass of water? No, maybe they left. I had a helper but they're totally letting me down here. Damn it. I'm losing my thread here, Jim. How is it going with that?
Okay.
Oh, the First Amendment, which guarantees us that government cannot interfere with our freedom of speech, has no provisions for penalties.
Yes,
and Congress would pass laws that say government officials, judges, bureaucrats, politicians that infringe on our First Amendment rights get criminally and civilly penalized. They have to pay money. They have to put time in jail or something in community service. We have no teeth to that.
That's right.
So government officials violate our First Amendment rights with impunity. The Trump administration itself asked the social media platforms, asked Twitter, old Twitter, to silence 5,500 liberal accounts in the first term. So this is something that government will do generally, either party. The Republicans aren't innocent either. It's just the Democrats are vastly worse.
Yes, you're absolutely right. And what was I going to say? Okay.
Water. I'll be right back. Okay.
Go ahead. Yeah, I will now entertain you. I think I'm going to sing or something. I don't know. But I can't. No, I can't sing because I can't. We can't do copyrighted material here. So, and pretty much any song I know except for "Happy Birthday," "Happy Birthday to you," "Happy Birthday to you." That's no longer copyrighted. Or it's anyway. The court ruled on that. I sang "Happy Birthday" because I just realized I can't sing any other thing because of the copyright violation. So,
yeah, I would love to play music on my podcast, but we stay away from it to just. You know, it's a stunning thing, and I realize I'm off topic, but the internet did destroy sales of recorded music, right?
No shit.
Mozilla, okay, and yet today, the music rights business for those very same songs that no longer can bring in the money they used to bring in selling as recordings, those music rights are so strong that those collections and portfolios of those artists are worth hundreds of millions of dollars. And so how is it that the internet destroyed one part of the music business and yet enriched another part of the music business and owning the rights to those songs? And it's because businesses still have to follow the law, the rule of law. So if you have an ad and you want to sample Bruce Springsteen, you're going to have to pay for it. You don't dare violate the law.
I spent the majority of my career in classical music, so I know all about this. And the thing is, it took me 20 years to learn about it because it's so damn complicated. It's unbelievable. But you're right. The only thing in music that's really worth anything of any material or financial substance is copyrights. That's
publishing rights. Yeah.
Publishing rights. That's right. Yeah. Yeah. So, and you address another thing too. There's no mechanism yet in place to play music on podcasts. No one's, for radio stations, all this sort of stuff. There's a standardized thing in place. There is not one for podcasts, and I don't know if it's going to happen anytime soon.
I mean, when I did a whole parting shot. I do this thing at the end of What's Bugging Me in my podcast, 5-6 minutes, and I did a whole one on the band Chicago and their debut album in 1971. Okay, and how extraordinary it was.
Yeah.
Because then I can play their music because it's a news item about the song. Okay, I'm not just using it as background to get into something or a quick metaphor.
But you can only play like 30 seconds, right?
Right. Right, up to 2 minutes and 30-second batches. Yeah, and right up to that.
I know people. It's like they used to sell vinyl records. I know they kind of come back.
They now sell millions of them, I believe.
Yeah,
I mean, it's become a collector's thing,
Right. Yeah, and some people think they sound better. I don't know about that, but
I just read somewhere that cassette tapes were coming back, but I just think that's just so silly.
That's bullshit. That's just all they do is sound bad. I mean, it's like you can make an argument that the vinyl sounds good. You can make that argument, not the cassette tapes. No, that's not going to work. Yeah. I mean, it was people forget those cassette tapes started out for dictation. They actually did, and they modified the crap out of it to make make music sound reasonably good. Reasonably, I don't know. That's a.
I remember when digital cassettes came out, it was a steel metal tape. And of course, the thought that digital would be on a reel at all, which is so analog instead of direct access like on a compact disc. But they worked so hard on that digital tape. And then recording digitally was the next big thing. But then ultimately, all of those advances, all of that effort wiped out by streaming.
Yeah.
Because, why would you even need this player? You can just kind of draw it down from the cloud and listen to it on whatever device you happen to have in your pocket.
Right, and you can stream millions of songs and still make like $65. It's really terrible. I don't, and you got Taylor Swift and maybe 12 other people are making millions of dollars, and everyone else. The only good thing you can say about it, but it's hypothetical, really, is that it did spread the money out among many, many more people. Where before, if you didn't have a recording contract, you couldn't make any money at all. But I don't know. Is $65 worth it? I have no idea.
Yeah, that long tail thing. You don't need to have a huge hit. You could just kind of rake in a little money over time, over the long period of time. I guess.
But Dennis, and then you die.
Right. Well, if you die in Oregon, the state has an estate tax on everything over $1 million. It's the most punitive estate tax in the nation. The U.S. federal estate tax lets you have the first $14 million free, no tax. We'll tax anything over that amount. But in Oregon, it's $1 million.
The concept of the whole thing is just, I think, criminal in the first place.
I know. Why should government have anything to do with what I want to pass on to my daughter as I leave this earth?
Right.
And they'll take up to 16% in Oregon. And that's on top of the federal. So Tim Boyle is the CEO founder of Columbia Sportswear brand, right? He's just got to move some stuff out of Oregon to Kentucky. And he's saying, my advisors are telling me I better not die here. I mean, he would lose, unless he does something with fancy trusts, $270 million of his $1.7 billion in wealth just for dying.
Well, what do you think about this thing that's happened in California, this quote wealth tax that they want to tax Okay. Is it everything over $1 billion? You have to pay 15%?
Yes, a one-time thing. No tax is ever one time.
That's right. Yeah, exactly.
And also, it's the first time ever in our nation's history we would have a tax on wealth, personal net worth, instead of a tax on the income you brought in that year.
Right.
And if you bring in a lot, we'll tax a lot. And you bring in a little, we'll tax only a little. Yeah, it's absolutely terrible. And it will lead to hundreds of billionaires or dozens of billionaires fleeing that state.
Well, there's only 180 million billionaires in California. And this has been my complaint about this the entire time. All these Democrats are always talking about, we got to tax the billionaires. There's only 1,000 billionaires in the entire U.S., only 1,000 people.
Yeah.
That have net worth over $1 billion.
But this comes from Piketty. Piketty did this book called Capitalism in the 21st. Capitalism 21. Okay. Right. And he concludes in the book that people who own stuff get far richer than people who work for wages. So let's take $2 trillion. Let's take 2% or 1% or 2% of the top wealth in the world from the billionaires. Okay, and we'll raise $2 trillion a year. And we'll put it where? Into some central place, right? Which I'm sure it'll just be wasted. And instead, if you've got this problem, start incentivizing companies to give ownership to their employees as an additional thing of compensation. Give them equity so that they share in that rising tide that you're blaming for wealth inequality. It's not to punish the wealthy. People are upset that Jeff Bezos is worth $250 billion. But Amazon is worth something like $2 trillion.
Yeah. And not only that,
$1.8 trillion of wealth in Amazon held by other people, by nurses' pension funds,
right.
because he is worth $200 billion. I think that's a price worth paying.
And not only that, they have 1.5 million employees. That's what I find. This company, company has 1.5 million people working for it.
Right. And don't tell me, but they exploit their workers. They're paying the minimum of $15. It's probably gone up to $20 per hour by now. And nobody is a slave who has to work there. If you don't like the job, go find another. So it's not like they're exploiting people.
Well, Piketty is right about the fact that the thing is in our capitalist system, the more money you have, the easier it is to make more. That's true. But the thing is, but taxing wealthy people up the nose is not going to solve the problem. It isn't. I don't know how you solve that. I mean, he's right. I mean, my thing is, and you've been in business journalism for a long time, capitalism is extremely flawed, but it's still the least flawed system of all of them.
Capitalism is optimism monetized. Okay, hope is a decision, and you invest with the idea that good things are going to happen, and it's out of self-interest, and that's a good thing. We're so lucky to have capitalism. Yes, like you say, it's got flaws, and government intrudes on it, and there's crony capitalism, etc. But oh my gosh, it's so much better than any other alternative. No one's been able to offer anything better. And my gosh, okay, here was I came across a figure where Fidelity had 40,000 millionaire accounts in like 2000 or 2010. And by 2020, it was up to 4 million millionaire accounts. I mean, did you just say that the state of California has 180 billionaires?
Right.
180 billionaires in just the state of California. Okay.
Right.
That's capitalism. And there's this lie that because they're rich, that's why people are poor. That's not it.
Oh yeah, no, that's been my biggest complaint here. People think the pie is fixed, and it isn't. And that's the thing. That's basically the standard number one myth propagated by liberalism, is that because Elon Musk has so much money, that means a bunch of other people don't. That's not true. And it's hard to explain to people how that works.
It means that a bunch of other people do have more money. I mean, Amazon has created millionaires in its stock. Tesla has created millionaires, people who invested in that stock and held on to it. And I mean, it's created all kinds of wealth for many other people. And, the liberals turned this, especially it started under the Obama era, turned this from a land of opportunity into a land of envy.
Yes.
They kept focusing on what people don't have.
Right.
Instead of realizing how lucky we are to live in the greatest nation on earth. You know, something like front page story in the Wall Street Journal a couple of months ago, only 25% of people still believe in the American dream.
Yeah.
And I want to say, shame on the other 75% of you, because it's alive to this day, and you've got to like take it and grab it by the lapels and make it your own, and stop whining about what you don't have, and stop whining about how hard it is, and start working harder and spending smarter and saving more.
Well, you alluded to this just a second ago about people have been complaining, well, the middle class is disappearing, and it is, but it's not because people are getting poorer. It's because half of those people are getting richer. That's the reason. I mean, you just said that. What did you say? Fidelity in 15 years went from 40,000 to 4 million millionaire accounts or something like that. No, half of America is richer.
Yeah, somewhere, some big increase. I'm sure I got the figures wrong and I've forgotten them, but yeah, the point is made. You know, I really think, I know this is going to sound a little ooey-oo, this next thing here, Jim, but I really feel like when you have a can-do mentality, when you put positive words into the universe, positive intent, when you believe hope is a decision, better things happen as a result. And we see President Trump again and again utterly change the debate just by saying stuff and put it out there when it hadn't been said before. And suddenly it changed. I mean, he was the first president to say, why are we spending so much to defend Europe when they're not even paying what they were legally required to pay for decades? He was the first president to say, why are we letting other countries, Canada, tax our dairy products at 120% or 200%, some of them, while we're taxing their stuff at 2.5%? You know, everyone said, oh, that's so unsophisticated. You don't understand. It's the way it's like. But, you know, he put into the universe Greenland. Okay. I mean, I'm telling you, this Greenland takeover thing, buying it is not over. And then it is in the lexicon is because he put it out there. And so let us put more positive things into the universe. Let us in our own lives dream bigger and say, I'm going to do this. I'm going to save up for this and have something that we want to do. You know, I know a guy, for men over age 65, he set the world record for bench press, 360 pounds. And he told me if I wanted to start a weightlifting regimen, I've got to have a goal. Like maybe I want to be able to do 10 pull-ups. You know, RFK Jr. can do 20 and he's 70 years old. But that idea of having a goal and going for it and setting it big and not being afraid of falling short. If you set a huge goal and you fall short, you still got a lot farther than if you'd set just a reasonable goal.
Right. That's what people don't understand. You're right. You still made improvement, you know, and that's the only thing that matters, I guess, I think.
Yeah, I think so.
You know? I tell you what, Dennis, let's end it on that. I love talking to you. You know that.
Same here. It was really fun. Sorry to get all mushy and optimistic.
No. I love the mushy stuff. I really do. I'm a mushy guy. So
good. All right.
Yeah. You take care. We'll talk to you soon. Okay.
Have a great day. All right.
Our thanks to Dennis Kneale for joining us there. Very entertaining man. Very astute. We have people on, you know, he's a former anchor for Fox Business and CNBC. It's good to have people on that know how to talk. Although we have had pretty good luck with that. Most of our guests are quite engaging, you know. Anyway, this is a Jimcast for Monday, January 5th. This is the part of the show where I talk about stuff that most other people in the news aren't talking about. But I have to address this today because it's simply dominating the news cycle too much, actually. Two things happened this morning. Nicolas Maduro was brought to court in New York to arraign him. He pleaded not guilty. And Tim Walz, the governor of Minnesota, where I'm sitting right now in Minneapolis, he announced he's not running for re-election. Mostly, and he was upfront about it because of the fraud that's going on. He says, excuse me, he says it's because he's any time he was spent defending himself could be better spent defending the state. And he's got a point, but we all know that it's basically, I'm sure the Democratic machine asked him to step down. So that's what's going on there. The thing about Maduro that really has to be addressed, or actually illuminated, is how incredibly faultless the operation was to take him out of the country. It's freaking amazing, because you have to think about this. It would have been way easier to just kill him. It would have. I mean, we did that with Osama bin Laden. You know, I mean, yeah, you could go in there and literally a couple shots and it's done, and then you leave. That's relatively simple. They took a guy that was alive, literally on the way to his safe room, to his panic room, and they kidnapped him and put him in a helicopter and flew him out of the country. And when you stop and think about it, and no Americans were killed, almost no Americans were hurt, and from what I understand, one helicopter took a little bit of damage, but was still flyable. I mean, virtually no damage, virtually no wounded, and no deaths on our part. I guess about 24 of his bodyguards were killed, Maduro's bodyguards, and apparently they were almost all or entirely all Cubans, because they have a special relationship. Yeah, I'm going to get to that in a minute. But even if you think this was unwarranted or unjustified, and I have to be honest, I don't understand how you could think that. You know, I understand that the Democratic machine is going to hate anything that Donald Trump does, but even if you do think that this was like illegal or immoral or whatever, you have to give props to the military for pulling something off like this so flawlessly. I mean, I can't even imagine it. So it's an urban area. You're going in. This compound was apparently highly fortified, and they got him out. They literally, between the time they landed at the compound and the time he ended up in New York City, it was only 7 hours. You know, and you'd be lucky to go to an airport in Caracas, Venezuela, and fly to New York and get to New York in 7 hours on a commercial flight. I mean, you would, but it's sitting around the airport, sitting around, oh, geez, you don't even know, if you've flown at all. My sister, the former travel agent, says the airlines are now the Greyhound bus service of the 21st century, and she's right. But anyway, this is really incredible. I mean, it's incredible stuff. Now, supposedly they practiced for months, and they even had a duplicate of Maduro's house that they actually practiced in. So, I mean, God knows we got enough money, even though we're running up about, what is it, $6 billion a day in debt. I just read that just before we went on online here. $6 billion a day. The national debt's now up to $38 trillion, and we're adding $6 billion a day. But, you know, that said, you got a country that's awash in money. You might as well build a duplicate, a replica of Maduro's house to grab him. And they did, and it worked. And it's, I mean, between this and the raid on the nuclear sites in Iran, this is really incredible stuff that they're doing. And God knows, okay, we're paying for it, but it's working. That's the thing, you know. Now, unfortunately, in let me see, get the date here, 79 or 80, when Jimmy Carter tried to send a mission in to Iraq to rescue the then, 44 hostages that Iraq was keeping from the American embassy. It failed miserably. It was, and you know, I don't want to. It's easy to fault him because, you know, his presidency did not go well. I mean, he was basically a failure as a president, but still, there's all sorts of stuff that can go wrong. And somebody even said that in the press today. When you think of all the stuff that could go wrong in this operation and the fact they pulled it off flawlessly, it's really, it boggles the mind. It really does. And as I said, it would have been way easier to just kill him. You could have killed him from a quarter of a mile away. They don't even know who did it. You know, I've never had a lot of experience with guns, but I'm a pretty good shot, apparently. And I'm visiting my relatives up north. This is like 2 summers ago. And one of my cousins, I don't know how he got a hold of it. He got a hold of what he said was apparently basically um, uh, uh, what kind of rifle? It was basically a assassin rifle is what it was. And the thing basically shot rockets. I mean, they warned me the first time I fired it, the kickback was unbelievable. I basically ended up on my ass, and they told me, now I was pretty good at it. I could hit the bullseye from 150 yards away, but you stop and think about that. 150 yards is not that far. This gun was probably good for a quarter of a mile. You could shoot, and this is consumer stuff. Well, apparently it wasn't actually. Apparently this was military grade, but that the CIA has way more powerful and sophisticated stuff than this. They do. It'd be really easy to just kill him, and they didn't. No, they captured him and they brought him to court. I have to say, it just kind of boggles my mind. The other thing that I found really funny was floating around this weekend, and I don't know if you guys keep track of this. There's an ongoing meme of Marco Rubio and all the jobs he has, because apparently anytime they need an interim director for something, he gets the title. There's a meme of Rubio sitting on the couch in the Oval Office, and the caption is Venezuela. I don't want to be the president of Venezuela, and that really made me laugh, because it's like, yeah. So now they have the vice president of Venezuela has been named the interim president, and at first she said she was going to fight all this stuff, and apparently somebody put a call into her because she changed her mind this afternoon. She said she would cooperate with the Americans. Geez, I wonder why. Because Trump said offhand on Air Force One, he said that if she didn't, her fate would be way worse than Maduro's. And I wonder what that would be, huh? I mean, these guys they're not playing around. This is not, this is serious stuff, and it should be. Maduro's, just let me be blunt, he's an asshole. That's all there is to it. He's been stealing American oil. He's been stealing American money. He's been flooding the country with thousands of drugs. And I would like to address my liberal friends here for a second too. And I consider myself a libertarian. No, I'm not. Excuse me, not my liberal friends, my libertarian friends. There's a lot of people on the libertarian side that said drugs should just be legal, or if you're going to draw a fine point, not illegal, right? And because we should all have freedom to do what we want. But the problem with that is there's an inherent problem with drugs, and that is if you take a drug that addicts you, you no longer have free will. You need the drug. That's all there is to it. You become basically an animal, and that's the problem with that. Once you're addicted to a drug, you have to have it. So God knows that's how sales keep up, and that's one of the wonderful things about that business is and that's what drug dealers are notorious for giving you your first thing free. That's and they know it's like the loss leader in business. You get people hooked, but in this case, you get people literally hooked, and so that's where I differ with my libertarian friends on this. I do not think it would be the death of society if you legalized all drugs. It would, because half of society would become basically zombies. So I don't think we have a choice but to fight the war on drugs. But we've been fighting it badly for 40 years. Now there's a possibility we can actually address this and make some real headway. Because fentanyl is awful. Fentanyl killed. I live here in Minneapolis. What is the name of the damn Prince's former recording studio has been turned into a museum, but they don't let anybody use the elevator because he died in the elevator. Now this guy was only 56 years old and he was hooked on fentanyl, and I don't think he knew until it was too late that he was actually hooked on fentanyl. He was buying fentanyl laced drugs, and not recreational drugs. They were prescription drugs that were laced with fentanyl. and because he had some back problems, and apparently he started taking these drugs, and now so he was like both addicted to the opioid and the fentanyl because the drugs are being cut with fentanyl, and he didn't know it. It's really, really terrible. So there looks like there's going to be a domino effect regarding the fall of Venezuela, or the resurgence of Venezuela as a maybe a democratic country again. It needs to go with saying, you need to understand this. 30 years ago, Venezuela was the richest country in South America. It was extremely affluent. It was on a par with the United States. And then Hugo Chavez took over, and then Maduro took over from Hugo Chavez, and they tried this socialism thing, which everyone like Dennis Kneill was talking about in the first half of the show. Everyone thinks is absolutely wonderful. It's never worked anywhere. It's been tried. It's failed miserably, and that's because, unlike all the other systems, capitalism is the only one that actually creates money. That's the reason. Like Margaret Thatcher said 40 years ago, sooner or later, you run out of other people's money. And that's right, you do. That's all there's to it. So you have the richest country in South America, one of the richest in the world, that has now been reduced to people eating their pets. And that's actually true. I'm not saying, if I'm right, I think 50% of the country is unemployed right now. There is no economic infrastructure to speak of. And it's like Trump said, and he got shit for this, but he starts talking about, he got shit for talking about shithole countries. The problem with the shithole countries isn't the citizenry. That's not the problem. The problem is the governments. You have to understand there's only about half of the 193 countries on earth, only about half of them are actually capitalist. And the other half aren't, and they're all struggling. All of them. That's, I can't, and Dennis Kneill can't, and Murray Sabrin can't, and all the other people I have on the show can't stress this enough. Socialism and communism simply don't work. They don't. And you can argue about that till you're blue in the face. I realize that on paper, Karl Marx makes a really good argument. But the problem is it's flawed. It's highly flawed. So Venezuela has gone to hell. And now that Venezuela might be back from going to hell, its trading partner, if you want to call it that, Cuba, and Trump is not wrong about this. Cuba is really, really going downhill in the last 3-4 years. They're having very, very serious problems, and he's right. That country might collapse on its own. We probably don't even have to do anything. So their experiment would start in what, 59? Started with, so you got 85 years, 65 years. 70 years of socialism. Well, that failed. The Soviet Union failed after 70 years. This does not work. It simply doesn't work. And Iran, you've probably heard there, and this can't be stressed enough either. The people in Iran are really, really losing their shit. They really are. They're in the streets. They're protesting, even though the government has threatened to shoot them. And in the past demonstrations they had, the government has shot them, a lot of them. They've killed them. They just kill the protesters, which is why Trump said, if they even think about it, if they kill any of the protesters, we're coming in. And we are. That's all there is to it. The Ayatollah Khamenei, he's like 86 years old. He's in extremely bad health. Supposedly, I'm reading on Hot Air this afternoon that he has a plan in place to exit the country and go to Russia to save his ass. That's all falling apart too. It's just these stupid despots. They simply won't address the fact that unless they keep their constituency happy, they're not going to succeed. Now, you could run. You'd have to do it. You'd have to do it by running up debt, but you could conceivably run a socialist country if you kept the citizenry relatively happy. It's the old bread and circuses thing from Rome. The admission into the Colosseum on a daily basis was free. You needed a ticket, but it was still free. And so the government set up entertainment, and made certain food was at reasonable prices, and they made certain to keep the citizenry relatively happy, and that's why they succeeded for like 2,000 years. That's why they did. Now that was more or less a capitalist economy, not really, because it was primitive, but you can't run any sort of government unless you address the actual happiness of your people, which is where Maduro also went wrong too. So he's decimated the economy, the infrastructure of this country, of Venezuela. Why wouldn't people? What are they going to? They're going to revolt sooner or later. It's only a matter of time, And it looks like the time in Iraq might be coming. It looks like this might be happening right here. Or I'm talking, excuse me, Iran. Uh, the domino effect here is really kind of startling and surprising too. So speaking of the mainstream press, which I wasn't, the television ratings for 2025 have now come in and settled. And I've talked about this before, but I can't stress this enough. You have to understand this. Fox News is beating the shit out of everybody on TV in any commercial capacity whatsoever, even the broadcast networks. Fox News's ratings cumulatively over the 2025 went up 14% from 2024. All the other television networks lost money and lost viewers. Fox News, not the Fox Entertainment Network. Fox News has now pulled ahead of the NBC, not NBC News, the entire NBC network in terms of viewership. They're just close behind ABC and CBS. So people have to pay to see this, right? I think that I don't know. I think right now there's the last I heard there's about 70 million cable customers in the United States, but now, as of 2-3 months ago, you can actually pay for Fox News, what's called over the top. They have this Fox One app where you actually get the Fox Sports networks too, where you can. I think it's $30 a month, I think, and you get to see everything Fox produces, both on demand and live linear too. So you no longer need a cable subscription. And simultaneously with that, ESPN did the same thing. And now you can buy both of them as a bundle together, even though they're separate companies completely. ESPN is owned by Disney. Fox is owned by the News Corporation. And it used to be for like many, many years, basically since the start of cable television in 1982, is it? Well, 1982 is when CNN went on the air, and they were basically the first cable network, basically, that started with any seriousness. And soon after that, there was MTV. But so it's been what? It's been over 40 years. So CNN, because they were first, dominated for many, many years. Then ESPN came along, and then they dominated. And now, for the last few years, Fox News and ESPN have been kind of tied in the ratings, but now in the last 2 years, Fox News has pulled way ahead of ESPN. And it's pretty obvious. The only two things people are interested in watching on live linear television are news and sports. That's it. So MS Now, the former MSNBC, they lost viewers in 2025, excuse me. But they're still doing okay. CNN's on the dumper. They're only drawing about 400,000 people on an average day, which is, you have to understand, in a lot of major markets in the United States, major cities, the local news does better than that. So now Fox News is beating ESPN, the perennial, leader. And they're only going up and up. It's hard for me to overstate their success. It's historic. Nothing in television has happened like this ever. And whether you watch it or not, I don't know. A lot of people don't like it. I understand, but God knows they have their fans. They have people. For the last quarter, I think it was on prime time, an average 3.5 million people tune in. And you have to understand that, like, the average episode of Chicago Fire or NCIS on the other major networks, they all draw about 4 million people, but those episodes cost about $3 million a piece to produce. So Jesse Waters gets on prime time on Fox News, and he's drawing about 3.5 million people, just a touch less, and he's doing it with probably a staff of 24 people. I mean, it costs relatively speaking, virtually nothing to put on, and they're on 5 nights a week, and they're just cleaning up. I mean, you got one episode of NCIS, and Fox is producing 5 episodes of Jesse Waters, and each episode's drawing more than or almost as much as NCIS is. God, I can't talk. I've been off for 17 days. I did not enjoy it. I think I mentioned that in the intro. Any rate, and meanwhile, now this is kind of fascinating too. Although this is happening more and more, after 157 years, the Atlanta Journal-Constitution printed their last printed edition of the newspaper on New Year's Eve last week. 157 years they're printing their paper. Now they've gone entirely online. Okay, fine. That's fine. The problem with this, and I'm not the only person who noticed this. A lot of people have talked about this in the media business, about the fact that the reason print newspapers are still surviving is because advertising in print newspapers seems to be way more effective than advertising online. And no one really understands why. I mean, I can give you some theories I have, but the fact of the matter is, if you run the lawnmower business, repair business in, like, Dallas, and you put a ad in the Dallas Morning News, people will call you. I have friends who run small businesses. They say this stuff works. It really works. Online, no, nobody, nothing. There was a period of about when Google AdWords first went online in 2003. For about 5 years, you could make pretty good money running ads on online, and now that's kind of collapsed too. Google's an exception because it's a search engine, and people are actually looking for stuff, and that's where they've made all the. Still to this day, 90% of the money Alphabet Inc. makes, which is the parent company of Google, comes from the search engine ads. 90% of it, and the other 10%, or almost the other 10%, is YouTube, which they finally started. YouTube finally became profitable after 15 years of running it. But I've said this, and because I'm not to blow my own horn here, but in the early 2000s, around 2001, 2002, a tech partner of mine and I, we basically seriously thought about creating YouTube, which did not exist yet, and we decided not to because we realized very quickly that the storage costs for all those videos would get completely out of control. And so let me see. YouTube started in 2006, and I think they were purchased by Google in 2011. But what you have to understand is that if Google hadn't bought them, they would have gone out of business, because Google was the only company that was technologically able to run that organization and step it up and grow it. Because for the very reason I said, the storage costs and keeping the videos was absolutely enormous. They're getting cheaper by the day, but in 2011 they were killing them. Now, the real amazing thing about YouTube, and I think the statistic is 300 minutes of videos uploaded to Google every minute. It's mind-boggling how much stuff's on there. They have not ever erased anything that's ever been uploaded. The very first video, which of course is very famous, is one of the founders at a zoo somewhere. But even from that first day, those videos are still online. Now, Google has finally announced, or Alphabet has, that this coming summer, they're finally going to start deleting stuff from YouTube, old videos, finally. I don't understand how they've kept up with it. I mean, you literally must have an army of technicians in every data center that go around every day installing solid-state hard drives. That's the only way you could do this. It's mind-boggling the amount of stuff that I don't want to know about it. I mean, I have a friend of mine who dabbles in video collection, and he has on his personal computer, he has eight 8 terabyte drives with 64 terabytes of data that he's used. He collects movies, and he's got thousands of them. But that would be nothing compared to what YouTube is doing. Nothing. I don't understand how they do it. But at any rate, just as a comparison. So finally, because of the video advertising within the videos on YouTube does make money. It's kind of like TV commercials. They're effective. So people do that, and it's worth the trouble. So now YouTube, but it took Google like 15 years to make money, or 10 to make money off of YouTube. They finally figured out how to do it. So now YouTube is profitable too, and that's it. As far as those are the only two things really in the entire Alphabet universe to make money is YouTube and Google search results. I'm sure they will eventually. It looks like at some point search results will go entirely to AI, because at least half the people searching for stuff actually want to answer to a question. And when you just ask the question directly, I'm pounding the hell out of AI every day. I mean, I'm asking constant questions. But then occasionally I'm looking for a website. So then, you use Google or Bing. But I don't know. Man, I'm good at talking, aren't I? So the other thing that happened this weekend is that everybody, I guess, I don't know if this happened during vacation, I suppose, but seems to come out. Everyone in the UFO community world seems to think that this thing called disclosure, where the government is finally going to admit that the extraterrestrials are real, is going to happen very, very soon. There was a bet going on Polymarket that it was going to happen before the end of the year. It didn't, needless to say. Now, I predicted, I still do, I'm holding to this, that sometime in December or January of 28 or January 29, after the 28 election, but before Donald Trump leaves office, I think he will announce it. I do, because the president announces it is going to go down in history. And so I don't think his ego can resist this. The other thing is, and there's a guy who he's written a book, and what is his name? Gary Scotty, I think his name is. I didn't write it down. I'm sorry, I should have. He's issued a book. His father-in-law was in Russian intelligence. Got that? His father-in-law is Russian and was in the KGB. And the KGB put out a report in the 1990s about how they reverse engineered a crashed ET spacecraft. And he had the thing translated and has published it now. And I think the book is called Engineering Infinity, if I'm right. I'm sorry, I should have written this down. I didn't. But I'm pretty certain it's called Engineering Infinity. I looked it up on Amazon. It's for sale. It's expensive, and there's no Kindle version of it. It was $55, and I'm not going to spend $55 on a single book. Sorry, I'm not gonna. Unless I might if it's for a guest, and I'd like to get this guy on. I'd like to talk to him. But what happened is he married a Russian woman, and his father-in-law, her father, was a scientist involved in reverse engineering the spacecraft. And this book is it's based on the notes that his father took regarding doing this. So, I mean, I suppose like everything, there's a possibility this is faked, but it's harder and harder, especially cumulatively, to start thinking that all of this stuff could be faked. It just can't. There's too much of it. There's just too much of it floating on all over the place. So I don't think this is going to happen until at 28, but what do I know? So anyway, Gary Scotty, the guy who wrote this book, he says that he doesn't think disclosure, which a lot of people, including what I'm talking about, would be literally the president going up to a podium and saying, well, we have evidence that the earth is being visited by extraterrestrials. He doesn't think that's the way it's going to happen. He thinks the president will set up a commission to investigate it, and the commission will come to the conclusion that it's real, and then they will announce those results instead of the president. Because and Scotty's got a point on this too. He thinks if Trump actually got up to the podium and says this, Trump might be mocked, and he might be, especially Trump, who half the country hates, and even half that likes him loves to make fun of him. You know, I mean, and so yeah, he's right. But if there was some sort of official function involved here, he thinks it would carry more and more legitimacy, and he's probably right. And he thinks that commission will be set up this year. So I don't know. We'll see. In the meantime, the Vatican is addressing the extraterrestrial issue. They have actually for several years. Just every once in a while, they raise their ugly head. But the Pope has said, apparently he said that the Pope is trying to address what they call the first contact issue. There's a lot of people think that this announcement will obliterate religions on Earth. It shouldn't, because as the Vatican has pointed out, that doesn't mean just because there's people who live on other planets doesn't mean that Jesus wasn't the Son of God, and it doesn't. It's like, whether you believe that or not, those two things are completely separate. And so they're trying to get ahead of the situation, pointing this out. Meanwhile, back here on Earth, we have a new commissioner, leader of NASA, and Trump has announced that he wants to make certain we have bases on the moon by 28, by the time he leaves office, and that we land a man on the moon, on Mars, in 2030. And that'll be really interesting, because right now I would almost think that I think SpaceX probably has a leg up on NASA regarding doing that. I mean, Musk has talked about this, but there is a possibility that a private company might beat the world's governments to Mars. You couldn't say that 50, 60 years ago, but now I think I don't know if it will happen, but there's a possibility. There really is. And finally, Musk has announced too that this year, Neuralink, one of his subsidiaries that does the brain implants for the brain to thought process. What am I talking about? What am I talking about, Jim? I'm talking about the fact that, say, you could, for example, type by thinking. These brain implants that they're going to commercialize this year. They said they've run tests and tests and tests, and the tests have turned out well. And they're literally talking about implanting a 1.5-inch square chip in your head. But this is mostly going to be available for people, paraplegics, people with severe physical and mental disorders. But they've been tested with those people, and this seems to work fine. There's a guy he's a quadriplegic. He does not have any use of his arms or legs, and he can type by thinking. This stuff's been floating around actually for quite a while, several years. But now they think he's saying they've tested this enough now to actually commercially make this commercially available. I have no idea how much it costs. And I don't think they do yet either. And I have no idea how much, you have to have surgery to have it implanted in your head, So, I mean, this is not going to be for the faint of heart at all. I mean, people are saying, well, 100 years, we're all going to have this, and maybe we will. I don't know. I'm not going to be alive. I have no idea. But for the time being, man, if you don't have the use of your arms or legs, this would be just a godsend. Or the fact that you can control the wheelchair with your mind. You don't need you wouldn't need a motorized wheelchair. Same thing. Does the same thing. And so I'll end with this. I got a couple things here. I kind of like to end with a goofy shit. It's like they call the kicker on TV. Over the holidays, Kourtney Kardashian launched a line of lollipops for your vagina. And I find that funny because in my mind, I'm 12 years old. So they're not lollipops you put in your vagina. You suck on the lollipop, and it has probiotics built in to benefit your vagina. So, and that's right. That's what you do with you suck on the lollipops. I was for many years, I was a DJ, and I was a DJ well before there was any real money in it, unfortunately. but I was. And nothing was worse than the bachelorette parties, and they had the little penis lollipops. Yeah, yeah. Oh my God. Well, she's capitalized on that. A woman in the New York Post, a woman who runs the largest legal brothel in Europe, and they did not say where the brothel is. I don't know why they didn't. They wouldn't say that in the article. But she says there's a whole bunch of surprising festival traditions during the Christmas holidays in brothels. She says that, yeah. And she says most of the guys, because a lot of the guys who go to brothels are married, they don't show up at Christmas because they want to spend Christmas with their family. How nice. Okay. You don't want to spend it with your hooker. It's like, okay, that's good. All right, that's fine. But she talks about that. Apparently, it's very lucrative. It's a very lucrative. They're making a lot of money. Apparently, the legal brothels. Because I mean, she said there are certain days of the year. She said literally guys are literally lining up outside to get in. Wow. And finally, the New York Post also did an article about the worst things people got stuck on their butts in 2025. So a lot of stuff, and if you think you could fake it by saying, "Well, I accidentally sat on it," no, no, you can't. It's unbelievable the stuff people get on their butts. Geez, I wonder why it's up there. I wonder how you got that in there. Oh man, I'm just a little child, but I found that humorous. I want to thank Dennis Kneale again for joining us tonight. All right, so like I said in the intro, we're only doing 2 shows this week, and this entire month we're only doing 2 shows a week. So our next show is going to be Thursday. Our guest is going to be former U.S. Army Colonel William Dunn, and we're going to ask about the stuff that happened in Venezuela, about this mission here to pull Maduro out. So he knows all about this stuff, and that's the reason I have him on. So he's going to be our guest on Thursday. I almost have a guest lined up for next Monday, but I'm not going to announce that yet. I don't like to announce this until we have this stuff confirmed. But yeah, we're only doing 2 shows a week, Monday and Thursday, except next week, only Monday. Only 1 show next week because I got business I got to take care of. And then the week after that, it's Monday and Wednesday. So, but anyway, we'll keep you track. I'll have this on the front page at jimandknight.com. I'm doing this for you. I'll tell you. This work involves a show. So I'm hoping that maybe in February or March, I have something to announce here. So that's why I'm doing this. So good night, Uncle Donnie, wherever you are, and good night to you, wherever you may be. Thanks for watching, folks. I really appreciate it. Glad to be back. We'll see you on Thursday night with William Dunn, okay? Take care.